Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining me on my show for this interview to talk a little bit about VHS 94. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Very nice to meet you.
You too.
I always like to start off by asking about how you got involved in the project.
So I got involved actually pretty late in the process. It was this spring, and Josh Goldblum, and Brad Miska, two of the producers, contacted me when David Bruckner, who's also been involved in the VHS world for a long
Mhm.
time, got pulled off of a VHS 94 to direct Hellraiser.
Okay.
And so David was supposed to direct the wraparound for VHS
Mhm.
94. Yes. And then, Pinhead came calling, and they needed to find a new director. And I don't know if there were lots and lots of people they talked to before me, but when Josh and Brad called, I was really curious. They had two versions of the wraparound script, one that David Bruckner had written, and I think the other one had been written by Simon Barrett. Neither one of them, they will both tell you this, neither one of them were quite fleshed out. I mean, what they both did
Mhm.
have this, a kind of a SWAT team rating what they thought was a drug super lab. And so I said that I would love to be involved. I was dying to make another film in general, over just the
Mhm.
quarantine year, everything shut down.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a really cool opportunity to be part of, a much more kind of commercial franchise than I'd ever been connected with. But I wanted to also kind of take a stab, so to say, at kind of revising the script that David and Simon had written. And so I said, okay. And honestly, Chloe's section, Hail Ratma had been already shot. And Simon and Ryan's were I think, getting ready to go into production, or in the middle of the
Mhm.
production when they contacted me. So the train had left the station, by the time that I had to jump on it.
Awesome. I know for me personally, this was my first ever VHS film watching. So I hadn't seen any of the previous ones, and it definitely starts off right off with a very specific feel to it. Felt very much after watching VHS back in the 90s, and really had that feel to it launching into the film. And what were some of the inspirations that you brought into your section of the film that you were able to direct?
So, my inspiration wasn't another found footage film. It
Mhm.
was actually another Canadian film. I mean, this isn't a Canadian film, but we did shoot in Canada. Um, was My influence was more like David Cronenberg's Videodrome.
Okay.
So I'm a Cronenberg fan in general, but I just think that film is so kind of ahead of its time. And when I was brought in, or asked, if I was interested in becoming part of VHS 94, I immediately wanted to make something that felt kind of meta to the VHS universe, and try to answer the question of, like, who is really making all these tapes, or how do these tapes get into the world. And very coincidentally, I had just rewatched Videodrome like the week before Josh contacted me, and I thought, oh, this could be really interesting to make something where the drug, so to say, or the drug lab, or the
Mhm.
being made in the drug lab is actually something like the video signal itself. And I just thought that even contemporarily, like, my kids don't know what a VHS tape is, but they are somehow, I think, addicted to still something like, I mean, it's a digital signal now, but I mean, they're just constantly glued to their phones, watching
Yeah.
moving images. Um, and I just thought it was right for the time. But it also, I thought, could resonate now, just in the way that,
Yeah.
we're sort of addicted still to the signal.
Absolutely. And I could definitely see that kind of Cronenberg feel to it. And it's such an interesting idea because Videodrome is a very unique film and obviously has its own places for videos in its story, and definitely having that kind of feel. And that was definitely really shocking thing, like watching that film, it being so visceral and you seeing what's really going on behind the scenes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, like this was a project that had a lot of moving pieces, a lot of people being involved. And so, Jennifer, what about it was the thing that you enjoyed most about being a part of making this film?
Well, I've never done an anthology like this, you know. I mean, I've made so many short films in my
Mhm.
life, probably more short films than most people have made films. Um, and so, you know, and I've had those short films, you know, screen, for instance, in programs with other short films, and I got to meet the filmmakers. But obviously, you know, being part of an anthology is quite different. And so it was, you know, I like so much the work of the other filmmakers. So it was, I mean, we didn't ever have a conversation about, you know, before I did my section, we did have a conversation, but it was not so much about how to collaborate or were we collaborating,
Mhm.
because they really still are very distinctive shorts, short films. But I would say that, yeah, the best part was, you know, was working with, you know, Simon and Ryan and Chloe and Timo. You know, I mean, they're just like very interesting humans and very interesting filmmakers, at the, you know, at the end of the day.
And it's so interesting too when you're thinking about an anthology film because like what makes it not just a bunch of short films strung together, just paired together, and having that through line and what really brings it together is so essential. And I thought there's a very unique and interesting way of stringing all these different ideas together because I know sitting and watching, pretty terrifying, some of these different shorts and different stories that are a part of this particular film. And you know, being able to be a part of that. And I always like to ask, it's like, obviously, it's like you put a lot into this. It's like, this is your part of your creation here. What's the one thing that you're just like, this is why people should go out and watch VHS 94?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, aside from it being, you know, it is scary movie season, you know, and
Yep.
so I think, you know, everyone is you know, is looking for some, you know, some new movie picks, and there's plenty of great, you know, vintage horror to watch.
Mhm.
But this kind of does both, right? It's like both a brand new film and
Yep.
also kind of pays homage to, you know, some vintage horror. I mean, I think that VHS 94 is really has a lot of like it really does, it does very much feel like, you know, if you are like a vintage horror fan, you know, if you are kind of a, you know, I wouldn't, I'm not going to name names necessarily, but if you like kind of classic horror, I think
Mhm.
that, but you're still looking for something that has just come out, you know, it's like, it's a perfect combination.
Yeah, because it's like sometimes it's great to just sit back and watch something you've watched like a dozen times and just enjoy that, especially, you know, it's October. It's like you have Shudder on. There's so many different things to choose from. Sometimes it's nice to watch something fresh and new that's like, I don't know what's going to happen here. And that's always the big fun about being scared, right? It's like you don't know
Yeah.
what's going to be coming.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. And I think it's also, you know, I think sometimes in anthology, not just as a maker, but I think sometimes anthologies as a consumer, either like you love them or you are like, I don't know, you know. I mean, and
mhm,
I think that the VHS franchise has a lot of super fans. I would say that it actually has a lot of like super haters. I mean, people who kind of like love to hate the VHS franchise or hate to love it or something like that. But I think in general, you know, if you love an anthology, if you love a horror anthology, you know, I mean, I think that this is a, you know, this is one with some, you know, with some familiar faces, you know, like Simon, and then
Mhm.
and Timo, and then Ryan and Chloe and I are kind of like new, new to the franchise, obviously. And I think that I think it's significant that there are two women writer and directors involved in VHS 94. And I know from direct experience that there's lots and lots of horror and genre super fans that are women, who want to, who will watch anything and everything, but I hope have also been waiting for some women to be attached to VHS 94 behind the camera.
And that's exciting too when you're thinking about, especially with like an anthology, you could have such a diverse group of people coming together creatively and bringing different perspectives to it. And like, I know for myself, one of my best friends that I'll watch horror movies with, it's a lot of fun and she really enjoys horror movies. And, you have that special person that you could sit down and watch Hereditary with and kind of just process what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate this kind of film because, like you mentioned this before, where it feels vintage and like having grown up in the 90s and watched old VHS tapes from the 90s, like it feels like you're watching something from the 90s on a VHS. And thinking about, like, I know you talked a little bit about some of those, like you could watch some of those horror films that you love. What are some of your favorite horror films that you like to put on come October time around Halloween?
Well, I feel like I go all the way back to something that's maybe not considered like a horror, but I do think it's a ghost story, which is Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. I mean, that's a real old one. I love Rebecca. I love the 78 version of Carrie so much. I love Rosemary's Baby. I love the first Halloween. And yeah, I mean, I'm a big Cronenberg fan. So, The Fly, I mean, Dead Ringers isn't sort of like that old. And it's also maybe a different kind of a genre film. It's not necessarily one that you would be like, I'm going to, it's October and I'm going to go through the catalog of the Cronenberg catalog. But that's that's sort of a handful of, of some of the older ones, but there's been some great new stuff. I mean, I loved, speaking of Cronenberg, I loved Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. I thought was just brilliant. Yes. I loved Saint Maud. And I haven't seen Titane yet, but I'm really excited about that. I just think, and I haven't not even seen the Nia DaCosta's Candyman yet. I'm sort of looking forward to that. So, I think it's like, and the ones that I said, I mean, Rosemary's Baby, I've seen so many times, and the same thing with Rebecca and Carrie, and even, Halloween. And so those are ones I am not ashamed to be like, let's watch Halloween again tonight, even though we watched it last night or whatever. I think that there's films that like your favorite food, if you love a favorite food, you're not going to say like, we already had that once this year. You know what I mean? You're like, no, let's have it again for the fourth time this week or whatever. But there's been some great, some really great new stuff that's come out, in the past like 2 years.
Absolutely. And Jennifer, I appreciate all your perspective on all those great ones. So it's like anybody watching, there's a lot of great recommendations there. And you will not be disappointed by Titane and experiencing that. It is quite an experience.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I loved Raw. So, I mean, and this one is like Titane's getting such great kind of, acclaim from, the commercial, the commercial world. And also, for it to have won, and for a genre film to have won an award at Cannes, just is like, that speaks very well. That's a big deal. Exactly.
But Jennifer, this was a pleasure, and thank you so much for giving me time to chat with you about your new film VHS 94. Hopefully everybody goes checks it out on Shudder, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Shane.